Arun sat in the cockpit of his small ship, staring at the endless stars stretching across the window. The galaxy looked calm, but his heart was restless. He was alone, charting unknown space for the exploration fleet back on Earth. His ship, Hope's Light, was not large. It carried only what he needed: food, water, tools, and enough fuel to jump between systems. For weeks, Arun had traveled without finding anything special. He logged the usual readings: dead rocks, silent stars, and empty stretches of blackness. But then, as he passed near a glowing nebula, his scanners lit up. Strange signals pulsed from deep inside the cloud, too regular to be natural. Arun frowned. "That can't be a star," he whispered. He pushed his ship forward, curiosity burning inside him. As he entered the thick nebula, colorful clouds of gas swirled outside, painting the view with bright blue and deep red. His sensors began to fail, static covering the screen. But through the haze, a giant shape appeared. It was no asteroid. It was a structure so huge that it looked like a mountain floating in space. Towers rose high like sharp teeth, and strange lights ran across its surface. Arun's eyes widened. "This is a station," he said. "But who built it?" Before he could send a message back to Earth, alarms rang in his cockpit. Something had locked onto him. His ship shook as beams of energy surrounded it. He tried to fight, but the engines went dark, frozen by a force beyond his control. Arun gripped the controls tightly. It was no use. His ship was being pulled in. Moments later, his vessel entered a vast hangar inside the alien station. The place was alive with movement. Tall, armored figures, not human, marched across the floor. They were insect-like, with sharp arms, glowing eyes, and armor that looked like it grew from their bodies. Arun's breath caught. He had seen many species during his career, but none like these. The hatch opened, and the aliens stepped inside. Arun stood straight, refusing to show fear. Two guards grabbed his arms and pulled him forward. He was led through long tunnels, walls humming with strange energy. Other prisoners, beings of different shapes and colors, watched silently from behind barriers. None spoke, but their hopeless eyes followed him. Finally, Arun entered a massive chamber. The ceiling was high, filled with glowing crystals that gave off green light. At the center stood a throne carved from black stone. On it sat a figure larger than the guards, taller and more commanding. Her body was elegant but strong, her crown made of sharp spines that shimmered with power. The guards pushed Arun to his knees, but he forced himself to rise. The figure on the throne leaned forward. Her voice echoed through the chamber, calm yet heavy with authority. "So," she said, her eyes glowing brighter as they studied him. "A human." Arun stayed silent, his mind racing. He had heard stories of alien rulers, but to stand before one was different. The queen tilted her head. Her voice carried curiosity, not anger. "Tell me, are you alone, human?" The question struck him as strange. Alone. Did she mean here in this chamber, or something deeper? He kept his face calm. "Why do you ask?" A murmur passed through the alien court. No one usually questioned the queen. The queen's eyes narrowed, but not with rage, with interest. She repeated the question, slower this time. "Are you alone, human?" Arun felt the weight of her words. If she wanted to know whether he was truly alone in space, the truth could put Earth in danger. If she discovered humanity's home, this empire might strike it without warning. He could not allow that. He lifted his chin. "I stand here as myself," he said carefully. "That is all you need to know." The court fell silent. The queen studied him, her face unreadable. Then she raised her hand, and the guards stepped back. She did not give the order to harm him. Instead, she leaned back on her throne. "You speak with defiance," she said. "Most creatures kneel at once, but you do not." Arun's heart pounded, but he forced himself to remain steady. "Humans don't bow easily," he replied. The queen gave a strange sound, half a laugh, half a hiss. "Interesting. Perhaps you will not break so quickly." "We will see." The guards pulled him away, leading him down another corridor. Arun's thoughts raced. He had survived the first meeting, but the queen's question echoed in his mind. Why was she so interested in whether he was alone? Did she fear humanity? Did she hope to find Earth? He clenched his fists. Whatever her reason, he knew one thing. He had to protect his people, as the heavy doors closed behind him. Arun whispered to himself, I may be one, but I will not stand alone. And in the shadows of the hive, unseen eyes watched him, curious about the human who dared to stand tall before the queen. Arun was pushed into a wide chamber that looked like an arena. The floor was smooth metal, and the ceiling was covered in glowing crystals. Strange creatures of many forms sat in cages along the walls. Some had wings, some had scales, and some had too many arms to count. Their eyes all turned toward him. The guards released Arun in the center of the floor. A loud horn sounded, and a voice echoed through the chamber. It was not the queen this time, but another, speaker of her court. Human, the voice said, you will face the tests of the hive. Strength, endurance, and mind. Fail, and you will be broken. Pass, and you will continue. Arun looked around. He saw no weapons, only the empty floor. He took a slow breath. So this is what she meant, he thought. She wants to see if I will kneel or fight. The first test began. A door opened, and a large beast entered the arena. It was taller than Arun, with heavy armor-like skin and glowing red eyes. Its claws scraped the ground as it charged. Arun had no blade, no gun, but he had speed and wit. He dodged to the side as the beast swung its claw. The ground shook where the claw struck. Arun ran toward the wall, forcing the beast to chase him. When it lunged again, he rolled aside, letting it crash into the metal wall. The sound thundered through the chamber. The cages erupted in cheers from the prisoners. Arun's heart raced, but he did not stop. He picked up a loose shard of metal from the floor and held it like a blade. When the beast charged once more, he leaped forward, using the shard to strike its exposed neck. The beast roared, stumbled, and then fell silent. The horn sounded again. Arun stood tall, breathing hard, but refusing to fall. From above, he felt the queen's gaze. She was watching. He could not see her clearly, but he felt her eyes studying him. The second test began. This time, no beast came. Instead, the floor shifted. Panels opened and steam filled the air. Suddenly, the chamber became a maze, walls rising high around him. Arun found himself trapped inside a twisting path of stone and steel. The voice spoke again. Endurance. Survive the maze. The walls moved as he walked. The air grew heavy with smoke. Strange traps fired from hidden holes blades swung. Fire burst and poison gas hissed through vents. Arun covered his face with his sleeve, moving fast and careful. He remembered his training on Earth. Stay calm. Watch for patterns. He saw how the blades swung in rhythm and slipped between them. He noticed how the gas came in waves and held his breath at the right moment. Hours seemed to pass as he moved through the maze, but finally he reached the exit. When he stumbled out, sweat covered his face, but he stood straight once again. The prisoners cheered louder this time, their voices shaking the air. The horn sounded, and the voice spoke again. The final test. Mind. A glowing cube rose from the floor. Its sides were covered in moving symbols, none that Arun had seen before. The voice said, "Solve it, or remain here forever." Arun knelt by the cube, staring at it. The symbols shifted like a puzzle, changing shape each time he touched them. At first, it made no sense. But then he noticed something. The symbols repeated in groups of 3, almost like numbers. He thought of Earth's simple math. He tried moving the symbols in order, matching patterns. Slowly, the cube began to glow brighter. The prisoners watched in silence, holding their breath. Finally, with one last turn, the cube lit up completely. The floor shook. The maze vanished, the traps closed, and the cube dissolved into light. Arun stood with the glow shining on his face. The horn blasted for the last time. Arun lifted his head. He had passed. The doors opened, and the guards marched in again. But this time, their movements were slower. Even they seemed surprised. They took him back to the throne chamber. The queen sat in silence, her glowing eyes fixed on him. The court was restless, whispers filling the air. No prisoner had lasted through all 3 tests before. Arun stood in the center. His body sore, but his spirit unbroken. The queen leaned forward. "You are still standing." "Yes," Arun said simply. She tilted her head, studying him. "Others fall. They cry, they beg. But you fight, even without weapons." Arun did not move. "That is what it means to be human." The court fell quiet. The queen's eyes narrowed. But instead of anger, there was something else in her gaze. A spark of interest. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "you are not like the others." The guards pulled him away again, but Arun noticed something as he passed the cages. One of the prisoners, a small creature with pale skin and wide eyes, pressed its hand to the glass. It looked at him with hope. Arun gave a small nod before the guards dragged him on. In the darkness of the corridors, he thought about what had happened. The queen was testing him, but not just for strength. She wanted to see if humans could break, and now she knew. Arun whispered to himself as the doors closed behind him. "She thinks I am alone. But if I can endure, if I can stand, then humanity stands with me." Far away, the queen sat on her throne, her mind turning with new thoughts. She had asked her question once more in silence. "Are you alone, human?" And though Arun had not answered in words, his actions had given her a clear reply. Arun was returned to a small chamber after the tests. The walls glowed faintly with green light, and the door locked behind him with a heavy sound. He sat on the floor, breathing deeply. His body was tired, but his mind stayed sharp. He knew the queen was watching him, measuring every move he made. Hours passed in silence. Arun wondered how much time he had before the next trial. He thought of Earth, of the fleet waiting for him to return. If the queen learned where humanity lived, she might send her armies there. That thought pressed on his chest heavier than chains. Suddenly, the wall shifted. A hidden panel opened, and a small figure slipped inside. Arun jumped to his feet, ready to defend himself, but the figure raised both hands. "Wait," it whispered in a thin voice. "I am not your enemy." Arun looked closer. The being was short, with pale gray skin and large round eyes that glowed softly in the dark. Its arms were thin, and its body looked weak compared to the guards. "Who are you?" Arun asked. "My name is Tyr," the creature said. "I was taken long ago. I have seen many brought here, but none like you." Arun studied Tyr. There was no fear in its eyes, only curiosity. "Why help me?" he asked. Tyr lowered its voice. "Because you stood against the tests. Others break. You did not. The queen fears that. She asks if you are alone because she wants to know if there are more like you." Arun's jaw tightened. "She wants to find my people." "Yes," Tyr said. "The hive grows by crushing others. They search for new worlds to feed their strength. If they learn of your Earth, they will come." Arun clenched his fists. He had suspected it, but hearing it from someone who lived inside the hive made it certain. He could not let the queen discover Earth. "How do you know this?" Arun asked. Tyr's eyes dimmed. "I saw it happen. My own world once shined with light. When the queen came, she asked us the same question. 'Are you alone?' Some answered with pride, telling of our people. The hive sent its armies, and now my home is gone. I am the last of my kind." For a moment Arun felt the weight of Tyr's sorrow. He placed a hand on the small creature's shoulder. "Then we cannot let it happen again." Tyr nodded. "There may be a way. I move through the hidden paths of the hive. I know where secrets are kept. If you wish, I will show you." Arun agreed at once. Together, they slipped into the dark tunnels behind the chamber wall. Tyr moved quietly, guiding him through passages that twisted like veins through the station. Strange sounds echoed around them, clicks, hisses, and the hum of distant power. As they walked, Tyr spoke. "The queen is strong, but she is not a god. Her power rests on fear. She keeps her people loyal with strength and terror. If the prisoners see someone who cannot be broken, they may begin to hope again." Arun understood. The tests had not only been trials for him, they had been a show for the others. His survival had already planted seeds of resistance. They reached a chamber hidden deep within the hive. Inside were tall crystal pillars glowing with streams of light. Symbols flowed across their surfaces like rivers of fire. Tyr pointed at them. "These are the memory stones," Tyr explained. "They hold the records of the hive, the wars, the worlds, the conquests. If you read them, you will know what the queen fears." Arun stepped closer. The symbols were strange, but as he touched the stone, images filled his mind. He saw planets burning under the hive's armies, skies filled with ships, and countless species forced into chains. He saw how the hive crushed rebellions, always with the same question before the fall: "Are you alone?" The vision shifted. Arun saw something different now. A shadow in the queen's own court. A fear that lingered in her thoughts. She had destroyed many. But one thing haunted her, the idea of a people who could not be broken. When Arun pulled his hand back, his face was pale, but his eyes burned with fire. "She fears unity," he said. "She fears a species that refuses to kneel." Tyr nodded. "That is why she watches you so closely. If she learns that humans are many, she will strike first. But if she believes you are weak, she will crush you slowly." Arun knew then what he must do. He had to protect Earth's secret at any cost. Before they could leave, the sound of heavy steps filled the tunnel. Guards marched in, their glowing eyes fixed on Arun and Tyr. The hidden path was no longer safe. "Run," Tyr shouted. The prisoners saw them. Arun shouted, "Do not give up. You are not broken. They can be resisted." The guards caught up and seized him, dragging him back. Tyr slipped into the shadows before they could grab him. Arun was hauled once more before the queen's throne. She stared at him with a strange calm. "You wander where you should not. You look at what you should not see." "Why?" Arun stood tall, even in chains. "Because truth cannot stay hidden forever." The queen's eyes glowed brighter. "You defy me again. Do you not fear death?" Arun's voice was steady. "Death is not the worst thing. To lose hope is worse." The court whispered in shock. The queen rose slowly from her throne. For a long moment, she studied him in silence. Then she sat again, her voice sharp. "You are bold, human. Too bold. We will see how long your spirit lasts. You will face me again, and then we shall know." Arun was dragged away, but in his heart, he felt stronger than before. He had learned the truth of the hive, and he had planted hope in the prisoners. And somewhere in the shadows, Tyr watched with wide eyes, whispering to himself, "Maybe this human is not alone after all." Arun sat in chains once again, locked inside a cold chamber. The walls hummed with energy, and the air smelled of metal and dust. His body ached from the chase through the tunnels, but his spirit remained unbroken. He had seen the truth of the hive, and he had seen what the queen feared. That knowledge gave him strength. For hours, no one came. Then the heavy doors opened, and guards entered. Their tall forms moved with silent discipline. One pointed at Arun. "The queen summons you." They pulled him out and led him through long corridors. The station felt alive, its walls pulsing with faint light. Whispers followed him, prisoners in cages pressing close to the glass, their eyes filled with new fire. Arun's defiance during the tests had planted something inside them. Hope, at last. He was brought into the throne chamber again. The queen sat upon her high seat, her crown of sharp spines glowing faintly in the crystal light. Around her, the court stood in silence. The guards pushed Arun forward until he stood alone before her. The queen rose from her throne. Her voice echoed across the hall. "Human, you resist more than others. You stand when you should kneel. You speak when you should be silent. Today you will prove yourself one last time." She lifted her hand, and the guards released Arun from his chains. The sound of metal hitting the floor rang through the chamber. The queen stepped down from her throne. Her tall form moved with a strange grace, her sharp eyes never leaving his. "Kneel," she commanded. "Kneel before me, and I may grant you life." The chamber grew still. The court leaned forward, waiting. Many prisoners pressed their faces to the glass of their cages, holding their breath. No one had ever refused the queen so openly before. Arun looked up at her, his jaw set. His heart pounded in his chest, but his voice was clear. Humans do not kneel to conquerors. The silence that followed was heavy. Then the court broke into shocked whispers. The queen's eyes burned brighter, but there was no rage in them, only deep interest. "Do you think courage will save you?" she asked. Arun shook his head. "Courage is not for saving. It is for standing when all else falls." The prisoners gasped, their voices rising. Some began to shout, banging against the glass walls of their cages. The guards moved to silence them, but the sound had already spread. Arun's words carried across the chamber like fire and dry grass. The queen raised her hand. The room fell quiet again. She studied Arun closely. "If you will not kneel, then you must fight." She gestured, and the floor shifted. A circle of light surrounded Arun, cutting him off from the rest of the chamber. A new figure entered the circle, an armored champion of the hive. Taller than any guard, armed with a long spear that glowed at the tip. The champion's eyes glared red with fury. The queen's voice rang out. "Face my warrior. If you live, you prove your worth. If you die, you are nothing." The champion lunged. Arun dodged, the spear slashing past his arm. Sparks flew as it scraped the floor. Arun had no weapon, only his wits. He kept moving, using speed instead of strength. Each time the champion struck, Arun twisted aside. Forcing him to waste energy, the prisoners shouted louder, cheering for him. Arun's chest heaved, but he did not slow. Finally, he spotted a weakness. Each time the champion struck, his spear arm dropped slightly. Arun waited for the right moment. The champion lunged again, and Arun moved fast. He grabbed the spear shaft with both hands, twisted it hard, and drove his knee into the champion's chest. The force surprised the warrior, knocking him off balance. With one swift move, Arun pulled the spear free. The chamber roared with shock. Arun now held the weapon. He aimed the glowing tip at the fallen champion, but did not strike. Instead, he turned and pointed it toward the queen. Gasps filled the court. The guards tensed, ready to move, but the queen raised her hand to stop them. Her eyes locked on Arun, and for the first time, there was a flicker of doubt in her face. "You dare?" she asked softly. Arun's voice rang out clear and strong. "I dare because I am human. You ask me if I am alone. The truth is, even when one human stands alone, he carries the spirit of many. You cannot break us, because we do not stand only for ourselves. We stand for each other." The prisoners erupted in cheers, their voices shaking the chamber. The guards struggled to hold order, but the sound kept rising. The hive had never heard words like these inside its walls. The queen stared at Aaron for a long time. Then slowly, she lowered her head. "So this is your answer?" Arun kept the spear steady. Yes, for the first time, the queen did not command. She only watched him, silent, her eyes burning with thought. At that moment, a tear appeared from the shadows at the edge of the chamber. The small creature shouted, "See him? He will not bow. If he will not kneel, why should we?" The prisoners shouted louder, striking their cages with fists and claws. The sound was like thunder. The hive was trembling, not from weapons, but from the strength of defiance. The queen stood tall again, her voice calm but sharp. "Enough." The sound quieted, but not completely. Hope could not be silenced so easily. She turned back to Arun. "You have given your answer. But remember this, human. A single spark can light a fire, but it can also be crushed. You may leave this chamber alive, but your trial is not yet over." She gestured, and the guards closed in. They took the spear from Arun, but their grip was not as strong as before. Even they seemed shaken by what had happened. As Arun was led away, he caught Tyr's eyes. The small creature smiled for the first time. Full of hope, Arun whispered to himself as the doors closed. The hive cannot understand it yet, but they will. Humanity is not alone. Arun sat in silence inside his chamber. His body was sore from the fight with the Queen's champion, but his heart was steady. He had stood tall before the Queen. He had refused to kneel. He had shown every prisoner that humans could not be broken. The sound of footsteps broke the silence. Tears slipped through a narrow gap in the wall, his pale eyes glowing softly in the dark. "You changed something," Tyr whispered. "The prisoners are no longer silent. They speak of you. They whisper of standing, of fighting, of hope." Arun leaned against the wall, breathing slowly. Hope is stronger than chains. Once it spreads, the Queen cannot stop it. Tyr's face showed both fear and excitement. "But she will try. She will test you again. She fears what you represent." Arun nodded. "Then I will give her my final answer." Not long after, the guards arrived. They pulled Arun out and marched him back to the throne chamber. This time, the hall was different. It was full. Every prisoner was brought forward, standing in rows behind glowing barriers. The court gathered in silence. All eyes turned to the throne. The Queen rose slowly, her tall form casting a long shadow across the chamber. She looked down at Arun with cold curiosity. "Human," she said, her voice echoing. "You have defied me at every step. You faced the tests. You faced my champion. You refused to kneel. Now there is only one question left." She stepped forward, her glowing eyes locked on him. Her voice was sharp and heavy. "Are you alone, human?" The entire chamber went silent. The prisoners held their breath. The guards stood still. Even the air seemed to wait. Arun raised his head. His voice was calm but strong. "One human may stand alone, but humanity never truly is. We carry each other in our hearts. Even across the stars, we are never without one another. That is what makes us strong." A murmur spread through the chamber. The prisoners began to whisper, their voices rising. The Queen narrowed her eyes, but Arun did not stop. "You think strength is power?" Arun continued. "But true strength is unity. We rise when one falls. We fight when one is struck down. You can chain one of us, but you cannot chain us all. That is why humanity will never kneel." The prisoners shouted now, their voices rising into a roar. The guards tried to hold order, but the sound was too great. Tyr stepped forward, pressing his hands against the barrier. His voice carried above the others. "We are not alone. None of us are alone." The barriers flickered as the prisoners struck them with fists, claws, and wings. Sparks filled the air. The hive itself trembled under the sound of rebellion. The Queen raised her hand, and the chamber fell quiet again, though the fire in the prisoners' eyes did not fade. She studied Arun, her face unreadable. For a long moment, she did not speak. At last her voice came, softer than before. "So this is the human answer. Not strength of body, not cunning of mind, but spirit that refuses to break." Arun met her gaze without fear. "Yes." The Queen turned slowly, her crown glowing faintly in the crystal light. "I have crushed many worlds. I have silenced many voices. But you stand here and speak words that spread like fire. You are dangerous, human, not because of what you are, but because of what you awaken in others." Her court shifted uneasily. Even the guards seemed shaken by her words. The Queen looked back at him one final time. "Go, then. Leave this place. But remember this. Sparks may light fires, and fires may burn. Yet flames can also be drowned. Do not think your kind is safe." The guards hesitated, unsure if they should truly release him. But the Queen's command was law. They opened the path. Arun walked forward, his steps steady. As he passed the prisoners, he raised his voice. "You are not alone. Remember that. Stand together, and no chain can hold you." The prisoners shouted with renewed strength. Some struck the barriers until they cracked. Others cried out with tears of hope. Tyr pressed his hand to the glass as Arun passed, whispering, "Thank you." Arun gave a small nod before stepping onto the path that led to his ship. The guards followed, but none dared harm him. The Queen watched in silence from her throne. Her glowing eyes filled with thoughts she did not share. When Arun reached his ship, Hope's Light, he sat in the cockpit and powered the engines. The ship trembled, then rose from the hangar. As the stars opened before him, Arun looked back once. The giant hive station loomed in the nebula, dark shadow against the glowing clouds. He whispered to himself. She asked if I am alone. My answer is no. Humanity is with me, always. The ship shot forward into the endless stars. Behind him, prisoners still shouted, hope spreading like fire inside the hive. Ahead of him, Earth waited, unaware of the danger, but also unaware of the strength one of their own had carried into the heart of an empire. Arun knew the war was not over. The Queen would not forget him. The hive would not stop searching. But humanity was ready. And when the time came, they would stand not as one, but as many, united, unbroken, and never alone.